Becky Cupforth with Rolling Hills Farm, and today we're going to talk about cover crops. So I'm sitting here next to this buckwheat that is just about to bloom. I'm very excited for that because this particular buckwheat is going to have pink blooms, so it's going to be really beautiful. Now let's take a look at some of the main reasons why we want to have cover crops in our garden. Okay, the first reason is for weed suppression. A lot of times we have short season crops like lettuce or radishes, maybe spinach, something that just, it grows really quickly and then it's done. Okay, everybody say hello to our rooster. So we don't want to have, so if you might want to save the seed and let it grow up and collect the seed, or maybe you just want to get it out of there. But what you don't want is to leave the ground bare. So what are you going to do? Cover crops are a really great option because they're going to suppress the weeds. You can also then, so that's one reason for cover crops. That's reason number one, suppress the weeds. And then also you can use them as green manure. So as soon as it grows up, you can let it die back in the winter and then plant right into it. We like to do this with millet. We feed some of it to our milk cows, and then whatever's left, we just let it die over the winter, and then you could just plant right into it. Just lays over. It's an annual. It won't come back, and you just plant right into it, and then you have this nice mulch for your next crop. Or you can cut it back and then lay it down, or maybe you want to just cut some of it. You can spread it around to other places. So it's a really great mulch and green manure. Okay, so the other thing too is that mulch, green manure, also is going to help with erosion. Okay, so if our ground is bare, then that is just going to open it up to erosion and also the nutrients coming out of it, because if the sun's just beating down on it and it's raining on there, there's nothing to keep that there. It's going to leach more nutrients and just erode. So lots of good reasons in that, and you'll see that all of these reasons, they kind of overlap each other. Okay, they're all good and they're all going to be working at the same time, which is awesome. It's like sixfold, all these things that the cover crops do. Okay, the next one is, I have my little list here because I don't want to forget any of them, is nitrogen fixation. Now this one is probably the one that you've heard the most about. Everybody talks about it in the gardening. Now, but you need to remember that not all cover crops are nitrogen fixators. Okay, it's only the cover crops that are in the legume family. So we have like peas or beans or clovers. Those are the ones that are going to be able to fixate the nitrogen. Now how this works is that these plants in the legume family are able to make this symbiotic relationship with bacteria in the soil called rhizobia. And the rhizobia has this ability to take nitrogen that the plant otherwise would not be able to reach it because it's not in the proper form, and convert it into a form that the plant can utilize. And in this process, the bacteria form these little nodules on the roots of your plant. And so you can see, if it's working at the end of the season, you can see the little nodules on the plants. And then the plants provide micronutrients back to the bacteria and also protect the bacteria. So it's very awesome how they work back together, which brings us to another thing, not bacteria this time it's a fungi that also is really awesome and forms a symbiotic relationship with the plants. It is called mycorrhizal fungi, and why we need cover crops for that is because most of our things in our garden, or a lot of them, are annual crops. So they're going to die in the winter and be done, and mycorrhizal fungi, they need live plant roots to survive through the winter. And we really want mycorrhizal fungi, people, because it is really awesome. They form these networks that can go across many plants. They're a fungus, okay, and they just form, and they have these little tiny myceliae that form this network, and they can reach nutrients that the plants can't otherwise reach. And also they protect the plant because they are resistant to some diseases, and so since they're covering the roots of the plants, they protect the plants from those diseases. And also they can give the plant warnings from certain bugs like aphids. And so they send this signal to the plants. The plants get that signal, and then they send off VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, and then those VOCs attract predator insects to come and attack the aphids or whatever it may be. So it's this amazing relationship that they form, that we want to keep all that mycorrhizal fungi that we can in our garden. But we need perennial crops in order to do that. So that is one way that we use cover crops in our garden. We like to plant hairy vetch for that. Just be careful, because you know, you don't want to have your perennial crops take over your garden either. We like hairy vetch because although it is a perennial and it survives through the winter, we pull it up really easy in the springtime when we're ready to plant again. And it also has flowers on it that are really good for pollinators. And that's the last reason we're going to go over about why you should have cover crops, is because it supports pollinators and beneficial insects, okay? Which is why we have this buckwheat planted right here next to our zucchini, because the pollinators really like buckwheat, okay? So of course we want to have pollinators. Even if you have self-pollinating plants, studies have found that the fruit production dramatically increases when you have an increase in pollinators, okay? The amount of fruit you get and also the size of fruit you get will increase when you have more pollinators. So there's so many good reasons to have cover crops in your garden, and they're so easy. So really, you want to be thinking about it. We go over this in my book. I'll go over different kinds of cover crops for you, how you can incorporate them into your garden, all these benefits, because I want you to think about how can you get them into your garden, where can you put them. We do the buckwheat like this for the pollinators. We do millet, so that and I usually plant this millet after we plant like when we pull our garlic or our I'm sorry, our lettuce, our radishes, things like that, our small crops. We plant millet in there, and we also like to use hairy vetch. Sometimes we use clover, and so we like to get some that we could feed our milk cows as well, because got to be really careful with the milk cows what you feed them, or the milk will taste funny. But the millet, the German foxtail millet, they love that, and it doesn't change, it doesn't affect the flavor of the milk. So, but any of these, you know, you could feed them to your chickens, you could feed them to goats, you can feed them to sheep, and they will love it, and it's very, very good for them, especially the sheep and the goats, because they need broadleaf plants, okay? The sheep and the goats need broadleaf plants, so very, very good for them. So now we'll take a little break. We'll go over and we'll show you how we plant some millet. Okay, now we're over here where we used to have some lettuce and some radishes that have gone to seed. We fed them to the animals, and we composted some of them. I've kind of cleaned up the edges of this raised bed here, which is nice because it gave me some really nice loose soil on the top, because we're going to broadcast the seed, which is really probably one of the more common ways to plant cover crops, because a lot of times if you want them for like weed suppression, you know, you want it to be planted pretty thickly. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to just broadcast the seed, gently rake it in, and then give it a good watering. Now, you can buy, there's lots of places to buy your cover crop seeds, and to get it in bulk. We really like Baker Creek seeds because we know that they're all non-GMO seeds. High mowing seeds, they're really good too. And territorial seeds, those are all really good places where you could go. You could find your cover crop seeds. They have large selections, and they'll tell you which ones are good for what. Okay, so if you are lost, or, you know, depending on what your purpose is, if you want ones that are really good for feeding your chickens, to plant maybe in their pasture even, or just to be able to chop it down and feed to them, they can give you lots of recommendations there for your particular needs. That would be a lot to go over if I went through all of that right now. But you can check out those places, and also in my book, I have different types that we use, what we use them for, what animals we feed them to as we grow them. So that is another option as well. So I'm just going to sprinkle this, and I like to do it really thickly because the cows love it, and it grows pretty quickly. So we will get, even though it's the end of July here, we'll still get a nice crop of this. It'll still get, you know, probably this high before it freezes. Now we are all set. We've got it planted. We'll just give it some water. I really hope that you guys give cover crops a try. You know what, even don't worry about trying to have it be perfect or when am I going to plant this? Give some a try. You can, you're not really going to mess up with cover crops. Okay, you can, they're all going to be beneficial in some way, and you'll get the hang of it. You'll see what works best for you, which areas you need it, or maybe you need to get more nitrogen in your soil. So you'll just find out what you need, but in the meantime, you still can be learning if you just plant them. Don't be afraid. Get out there and give them a try. You guys have a great day. Make sure that you follow, like, and share so we can help more people learn and have their best garden yet, and we will see you next time.